Remember the days of playing your favorite wrestling game while you rocked out to those fantastic tunes that blared through your TV speakers? That's right, wrestling games used to include music during matches. Well, I guess if you go back far enough, they didn't, but at the peak of the genre, these games included exclusively unique soundtracks that remained stuck in your head, even as you were trying to get through fourth period history. Yes, those were the days. And then came licensed music, and while it wasn't quite the same as those original pieces, there was still something entertaining about having some sort of ambiance during gameplay. WCW vs. the World was a 1997 US release, based on the 1996 Japanese game Virtual Pro Wrestling, and its Japanese roots can be heard in the game's soundtrack, where synth leads accompany wailing electric guitars and heavy drum tracks. The music here would leave a lasting impression on those who grew up playing the title, and nearly 20 years later, many still regard this as one of the greatest wrestling game soundtracks of all time. While WCW Nitro wouldn't feature an extensive soundtrack like its predecessor, the style remained in the same ballpark, albeit a little on the heavier side. WCW NWO Thunder wouldn't wow gamers in the gameplay department, but how about musically? The tracks here feature a darker tone with a more electronic influence than previous titles. As games would progress for the promotion's titles, we would hear less exclusive tracks, with developers moving away from music being included during gameplay. The same was happening for rival company WWF with their Acclaim games, as matches featured only commentary, wrestler voice clips, and attack sounds. Those that spent an abundance of time in the game's create modes, however, most likely get hit with feelings of nostalgia whenever they hear those two titles' menu tracks. While these games featured multi-platform releases, the AKI wrestling game titles were exclusive to the Nintendo 64. WCW vs. NWO World Tour would hit the US and Europe in November of 1997 and February of 1998 respectively, with the game's Japanese counterpart Virtual Pro Wrestling 64 dropping a month after the US release. The game would be received well, with many praising the overall presentation, including the game's music, which picks right up where WCW vs. the World left off on the PlayStation. World Tour would go on to sell 1.3 million copies in the US, making it the second best-selling wrestling game behind WCW NWO Revenge. Speaking of Revenge, that would be WCW's follow-up title, releasing in fall of 1998 and improving on just about everything that was featured in the game's predecessor. And though that title showcased quite the amazing soundtrack, this one helped bring that authentic WCW feel to life, with music that sounded like it was plucked straight from the promotion's library of entrance themes. We even received a recreated version of the WCW Monday Nitro Open. As Acclaim's contract with the WWF expired, the promotion would agree to what would become a lengthy partnership with THQ, bringing the AKI Nintendo 64 game engine over to the World Wrestling Federation. As WrestleMania 2000 would hit store shelves in late 1999, we would hear that iconic WCW NWO Revenge sound return. And while we would hear some of that sound carry over to the game's sequel, WWF No Mercy, this one would also stray a bit from the heavy rock sound heard in the previous titles, as other genres such as hip-hop and dance were now included. The SmackDown series would hit the PlayStation in 2000, and while the previous two Acclaim-published WWF titles featured commentary, this one didn't. Instead, the game would receive a healthy library of original music for gameplay, composed by Masafumi Ogata, who also created music for games like Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Sonic CD, and Restar. As the series would progress, each game would feature its own extensive collection of in-game music, despite commentary being introduced in WWF Just Bring It for the PlayStation 2. Here Comes the Pain would be the last title in the series to feature original in-game music, as SmackDown vs. Raw would offer fans a selection of tracks by established artists such as Public Enemy and Anthrax, Powerman 5000, and Breaking Benjamin. This would also become the case with the Nintendo GameCube wrestling titles, starting with WWE Day of Reckoning. But what about the two titles that came before that? 2002's WWF both, I guess. WrestleMania 18 featured a soundtrack unlike any other wrestling game at the time, featuring lots of synth and a smoother overall vibe to it, not unlike mid-90s R&B at times. Some might even argue that the music is the best part of the entire experience with this title. The game's sequel, WrestleMania 19, would feature an overall darker and heavier soundtrack, more in line with what we were hearing over on the PS2 with the SmackDown series. WWF Raw on the Xbox would feature tracks mostly comprised of quick tempo dance numbers, but the game is probably most known for its main menu music. Raw 2 on the Xbox would share many tracks with the PS2 title WWE Here Comes the Pain. While WrestleMania 21, well, that game. Gaming has changed, yes, I know. Original music is mostly a thing of the past for any type of sports title, or even, sports entertainment. Music in general has changed, so even if this concept made a return, the likelihood that it would sound anything like the stuff we once had isn't very high at all. Regardless, these games from the past contain music that did something to us. I mean, not like that. What I mean is that we grew up to these iconic songs playing in the background as we escaped reality through gaming. Some of these songs more special than others to some of us, but either way, they had an impact on our lives and they've helped create an atmosphere to those games that still have a lasting effect on many of us.